there's not many people that I talk about every other day. And you're one of the unique people that I do, because every training course that I run, your name definitely comes up in those courses.
Why?
Just
Why?
because people ask about, well, how is Agile being used out in the industry? And you know what, the whole WIKISPEED sort of case study, I guess, for us Agilists now, it's just a really interesting story. And I can only tell it based on what I read on the websites. So I would love to hear it from the man himself. And by the way, Joe, you have the most phenomenal name as well. That's something else I want to point out. It's almost like a superhero name. If I could think of, you know, a cool name for a superhero, Joe Justice would be like the best name ever. I don't know about you, Barney. How do you feel about Joe's name?
Yeah, I feel like there's this guy flying around with a wonderful blue cape saying, "I will give you justice." Bringing justice, and I saw, I think Joe Justice was kind of in on these on TED Talk and stuff, and you were like, you know, if you spend 2 hours a day working on social problems, the world would be different. 2 hours a day, 2 hours a week. So I feel like maybe, you know, you could be the superhero going around telling people, okay, today this is the problem we're going to solve, and this is the justice we're bringing to the world.
I love it, Bonnie. I love it, Paddy. Yes, please. I will try to live up to the name I was lucky enough to get. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad, for that name. Maybe just as fun, I have a brother. His name's John Justice.
Oh, wow.
Also, it has that alliteration.
Yeah.
Sorry, that consonants. Yeah. So we're lucky, maybe.
You know, that you achieved something phenomenal there, where you're able to apply what you know best at the time. I think it was, you know, sort of your agile background as a software engineer, and you're able to launch this kind of product to market in record speed time. Totally disrupted, I guess, the car industry with that. But you know, how did you start that? Like, what gave you the inspiration to do that? Because if you had said to someone on the street that that's what you were about to do, they would have probably kind of given you a funny look, I guess, at the time. I don't know. Is that how it was?
You are 100% correct, Paddy. That's exactly how it played out. I'd gone to university in engineering and computer engineering and computer science, which involves some computer programming, but actually a lot of how to make computers, so processor theory and electronics. And then when I graduated, my first serious job out of college was one of the early adopter companies of this thing called Agile. And instead of having a 5-year software introduction cycle or product introduction cycle, they would try to do it in less than a month and actually show something working that you could use in less than a month. And that was totally new to me. And then actually even bigger than that, but I don't think most folks will actually take this part as seriously, but truly even more important than that, I was handed 2 books when I started work. One was Agile Project Management with Scrum, which had just been written. And more important than that was this book that never became famous. It's called Zap, The Lightning of Empowerment. And that's the book that actually changed my life. This Agile stuff gave me a business structure to let me try to do that. And it was basically like, how do you make people excited? And not in some nerdy scientific way. It was like in a very, things that your parents might have told you when you were really small, like share your toys, like that kind of thing. It was a book like that. And that book totally changed my life. And then in the United States, there's a pension, a retirement plan that's operated by the government, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Committee. So if a large airline pays into this government entity, into a retirement fund, that can be distributed at a retirement time to their employees. And it's an option, and not everyone has to use it. You can use it in different ways, but it is a government service provided by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Committee. And web services weren't yet named web services. Microsoft was trying to push this concept, I shouldn't even say push, trying to develop this concept, this new idea of web services and a stable API, a programming interface floating out on the web, which we use all the time, every millisecond now. So it caught on. This is the backbone of modern digital society now. It was a new concept, and they weren't even sure what to call it yet. And as the new hire, my company that was trying Agile said, Joe, would you try to write a web service for the Pension Benefit Guarantee Committee? They've asked us to do it, and it's a whole new technology stack. And we're going to learn it. It's important, but you're the newest person, so you don't have any legacy to forget. Can you just try this brand new technology stack? And I said, okay. And I did. And that was my first serious project. And as far as I know, it's the code I wrote that's still being used for all the PBGC filing. It worked. It took a while, but I did it in sprints. I worked mostly alone, but I had mentors in the company that I would check with. And Microsoft was pushing security stuff at the time. And I got a Microsoft security digital black belt. And I liked the idea of having this credential that said I attained a level of meaningfulness, which was super important now that we were trying to go to web services, right? What security protocols we're beginning to understand it. And that's where I learned to work post college. And it happened to be try to get something working in the shortest possible amount of time using really good architecture and really good security, because this thing's going to scale. When you hit go, it goes. So you have to set it up well. So you have to use good principles, good practices, and try to understand those. So when you hit go, it kind of becomes alive, right? It propagates out through the internet. And sometimes you can't call it back, not easily, right? So you got to get some things right before you say, go, be free, which is really what cloud-based and web-based does for us, and distributed programming and microservices and all that stuff. Now, interestingly, later on, it looks like that's true of businesses and social systems. And that's worked great in my consulting to companies to restructure them. What's the smallest rule set that the management group, if you even have a management group, however that actually happens, that's another conversation, what they endorse, what they pull, what they recognize, what they respect, so that it scales attractively and in a secure, functional way. So there's this principles-based approach that totally came out of that book, Zap the Lightning of Empowerment. This super senior person at one of the major consultancies, working in their Agile transformation group, who I had taught. So that's also part of it, like seeing the way the world actually works. These groups that charge millions and millions of dollars to facilitate an Agile transformation, most of them, like more than half, are my students. And like, well, wait. So that's the way the world works. And the case study you used was my second company, but you put your brand on it. That's interesting to me. And actually not socially just or correct. So there's opportunity in the world. This person says, how much change can the company tolerate before it starts to die? And at first I didn't understand the question. Through the conversation, it became apparent they were saying, how many people can we lay off at once and not have morale tank, right? And that's an anti-question anyway. Like, from a spreadsheet management perspective, that makes sense. If you're just trying to optimize investor output, that makes sense. But if we use a more ethical definition of a business, the purpose of a business is to create healthy, aspirational employment. That's an anti-question. Like it doesn't even make sense. And I was like, I see we're not connecting. But the actual model of change, which again is totally antithetical to what I was hearing from that person at that time, is how excited are people? And that's it. It does come back to Zap the Lightning of Empowerment. If people feel not empowered and not excited, it's been too much negative change. And that's it. That's the whole thing. So it's not like you can lay off 20% of the workforce and still not reduce velocity. There's no equation like that. If it's, we gave voluntary redundancy to up to half of the employees, and said, half if you want to stay, you absolutely can, but we're now 20% as profitable as we were. So it would be 20% of what you're making before, because that's what we've got. Like that, here's the balance sheet. That's what we've got. But if you want to stay, you've got a job. Then everyone that chooses to stay is thrilled and velocity goes up. Like, it's just a different model. And it has everything to do with respect for people, which the Agile Manifesto oozes. It's so packed into there. It's such a beautiful document, which, by the way, you have all these signatories, some of whom have gone on to say, look, it's business value and it's crushing your competition. They didn't write it. They all say Ward Cunningham wrote it. And so you have all these signatories of the Agile Manifesto, and yet they all say Ward Cunningham wrote it. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what's Ward doing? Ward's got a website saying, I used to consult, but I have just enough money, so I don't take any paid work anymore. I just do what I want. And Ward lives in Portland, Oregon. I've not met Ward at his home or anything, but I believe it to be a very reasonable, affordable home that he paid for a long time ago when Portland was even cheaper. And I think he rides a bike a lot. And he just works on wikis and federated wikis, which again is this fractal mindset of how do you have a few set rules, a really good equation that scales itself, right? Meanwhile, the other signatories of the manifesto are like scrambling to make a living or whatever they're trying to do, or amass wealth. And they're saying things like, here's the meeting of product owners and hierarchical meeting you establish, and the team of teams model that is not a natural scale. It's a hierarchies with a new name. And you're like, let's go see what Ward's doing. So, what an interesting world we live in.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know, Barney, you've probably got lots of thoughts on kind of motivation of teams and staff. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah. But before I go there, so I like you mentioned, you work for Tesla, and I reckon that you have a fair sense of the intellectual atmosphere there and the innovation that goes on there. So how different or what are you doing different than what's happening at Tesla?
Oh yeah, so Tesla is the most fun I ever had at work by such a huge margin, and a really focused way to say that is because it's so fast. Everywhere else I've ever worked has always felt like it was moving in slow motion, and I didn't know why. I didn't have a comparison. I just thought, this feels like it's moving in slow motion. This is really frustrating. Tesla didn't, and it's the first company I've ever worked in that felt that way. WIKISPEED felt that way too, but Tesla is the only company I didn't make that felt that way. And in fact, it felt fast. And that was so refreshing. It was so validating. It gave me a zap, the lightning of empowerment. Maybe I'm not crazy, that you can really do this, and you can do it at a world-class level against competition that's really skillful. I have a lot of respect for the other companies that play in the spaces Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink and the Boring Company and OpenAI play. And the Musk companies are obliterating them. So it's not like the competition is silly or unskillful. So I felt validated. And then what's WIKISPEED aspire to do, or me, whatever the branding is, aspiring to do now that I've learned directly in Tesla, I think Musk is exactly right on when Musk talks about how fun this stuff has to be. So there's a rave cave being built in Berlin. Musk just changed his title yesterday. He retained CEO, but his primary title is Techno King for techno music, for techno dance. That is Musk's title of Tesla as of yesterday, is Techno King of Tesla. And the CFO, Winkerton, something.
Well, look
and he's awesome. I know his name. He just changed his title to Master of Coin. He retained CFO, but he's Master of Coin. And I believe that's a play on how much Bitcoin Tesla bought, which Deutsche Bahn did not go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin. Pfizer did not go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin. There's this progressive mind at play in these companies that's allowed to, and it's not moving in slow motion. And part of that is the empowerment, right? You don't have to wait for a committee to review it and a committee to review that. It's an actual trust and respect for people. You know, you're allowed to make some big, expensive mistakes, and some of those won't be mistakes. They'll be really good ideas. And Tesla made a ton of money already on Bitcoin. So that was a good idea. So Musk leads with fun. Rave Cave in Berlin, funny titles, memes. There's a roller coaster in Fremont, California. Or actually, I didn't see it anywhere when I was there, but Musk keeps talking about it, so I don't know. But SpaceX Boca Chica has a tiki bar, a Polynesian-themed bar at the top of one of their launch towers, and a restaurant made out of exploded failed rocket ship parts at the bottom. And there's this tremendous amount of fun. Well, working in there, it was also really physically difficult. Like there are no keyboard only jobs. Like you move 20 kilograms around all the time, all day, or sometimes more depending on what tools you have. You work with robots all day, and you're thinking, and you're on a keyboard and everything. Or a lot of it's phone based, actually. A lot of the development is phone based. So you just hit stuff as you're working with robots and inventory super fast. I think there's a real opportunity to try to bring luxury into the employment experience at every level. A reason why I think Daimler will never compete with Tesla and will just continue to die, and Volkswagen as well, despite the best efforts and interests of their current CEO and leadership team supporting the CEO, is when I worked in Tesla, so did Musk. And by that, I mean, Musk would be on the line putting car parts together. Musk would sleep in the factory, still does. There's a video clip of Musk saying, "Here's where I sleep," that Musk put on the internet. That's right by where that's like 2 meters from where I spent a lot of my time when I was at Tesla. And as a result, if someone says, "We need to change this tool," they just say it to Musk because he's right there. Or they say it to one of the other people that's been around Tesla a long time, which is almost like authority. I mean, there's no structure, right? It's a flat company, but these people that are deeply experienced are just working next to you. They don't have offices. That's not how this works. They're just there doing the same job you're doing. And so you don't ever have to make a report to say we should change these robots here, or we should buy this land, or even big ticket decisions. You don't make any reports. You just say we should X, and they know the background because they're doing the same job as you, and they just say yes or no. You don't even actually have to wait for them to say yes or no, but you're fully empowered. But if you want their opinion, they know it. So there's no reports. It's so fast. And the leadership team at Daimler is never going to go on the Daimler line and build cars all day. They're not going to do that. And if they did, they'd have a conference room set aside with the shutters drawn and nice food served. And they would make one engine together, like wearing suit jackets and slowly. And it wouldn't be put in a production car before it was checked by the people that actually do that for work. They wouldn't get on the actual line and do the actual work, especially not every day. And because that culture has this caste divide culture, this lack of equitable distribution of wealth as its concept, they're never going to be fast. And every time they try to scale Agile, it's how do we scale Agile with these caste systems and this separation of where ideas come from and where they're executed. Like they'll never be as fast. They will always die if they have a true Agile competitor like the Musk companies. So what I'm trying to bring is, how do you make either you have executives that enjoy working in line conditions or are willing to work in line conditions, which is what the Musk companies currently do. But what I'll say is the line conditions, even though Musk tries to make them fun, are really hard. They're really, 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 really hard, like physically difficult. It's challenging. Or you try to make the line luxurious. And I'm really interested in that, how to do that at such a low cost that it is still an aggressively profitable proposition, so that the lowest level in the company is actually luxurious. And someone coming from an executive of Airbus would feel happy on the line in that company. It would feel like a first-class Airbus cabin. That'd be the type of experience you'd have. And not at the expense of other people, not that there's staff helping you, but that the environment is automated, constructed to be first class or private jet style. And the cool thing is some of that experience is very low cost. It's a choice of lighting. It's a choice of sound deadening. It's a choice of aisle width. If you've got an aisle that's super choked and people have to walk both ways, a natural lack of respect and space evolves. And if things are at head level and you have to duck and go under, especially while you're carrying something heavy, it's a different experience than if you have a wide shoulder width and they have a wide shoulder width going the other way and it's quiet. That has so much to do with it. And some of that has very little cost ramifications. And I'm not saying I need a bunch of ultra low paid people to give me tea all the time. That's not what I even want. But having baristas and baristas, which the Musk companies do have, that will make a world-class coffee drink for you 24/7, 365 for everyone. Like you have to be at some level before you get that. And put those within a 2-minute walk of all the work areas. That's a super good solution that's actually incredibly inexpensive to do. I want to see a manufacturing line that's equipped by Hermes Paris. I want to see Gucci paint schemes and joint covers and linen covers on industrial robots. I want to see Michael Kors styling on handrails, on safety rails, on the loading docks. And I want it to be as quiet and energetic as a major international city airport lounge. And a lot of that costs almost nothing. A lot of it. Some of it does, but a lot of it doesn't. And even if we only took the parts that cost almost nothing and don't rely on a servant class to keep it going, only the parts that are automatable, it'd be such a massive difference. So I've got a choice. Do I make WIKISPEED a factory as a product company that makes factories that are respectful and luxurious at the lowest cost we can figure out how? Or does WIKISPEED continue to consult? Or does WIKISPEED encourage its team members to go join companies and expect that? So they create pull. And currently the answer is all three. We're working on something called the Mega Factory project, which is a fully solar powered water self-recycling project. Right now it's just a project that aspires to be a luxurious modular factory that we would sell at low cost. Right now it's just a project. I joined Tesla and I'm considering joining another Musk company because it's super fun. And then just expecting to be treated well and trying to create pull. And right now we consult. I fund all that by consulting to a lot of companies that are really interested, and maybe we've got a shot.
Wow, that's some really nice, insightful stuff out there. But like you were mentioning, about Tesla and keeping the momentum and everyone's, right there on the job doing their thing. How would you probably consult on keeping up that momentum of agility, innovation, and creativity? How do you keep that momentum?
I think the Musk companies do an awesome job at measuring the outcome. So there's these huge monitors everywhere. And by huge monitors, I mean like they just went to the nearest big box store and bought whatever the lowest cost huge monitor was. So the type of monitor is different depending on what was on sale that week, right? The frugality is so awesome. Like you think, I could do this once you're in there. Because you could. Like it's truly people just like you said, we really should get a bunch more monitors. And so they just went out and got like from whatever the big box store is. Or a lot of stuff is ordered from Amazon. Like it's a lot of the industrial supply is from Amazon. Amazon has changed the world and continues to do so. Huge respect to all the Amazon groups, as has Starbucks in a different way. So you have all these monitors, like 60-inch, or it was maybe a good price point at the time. Maybe just now they're becoming 80-inch. But anyway, all these monitors around at just above head height. And they show things, they show flow, how many cars are where, or pieces of cars. And they show defect rates, and they show customer satisfactions in pretty precise ways. Like if a customer ever said, we're not going to accept this car. We get a car, and if ever a customer says, no, this car has issues, what were those issues? Because that's like the most tragic thing a customer could do to your product. I won't accept it, and for these reasons. If that ever happens, that's on these monitors everywhere. And at the same time, there's people doing that assessment and all these automated tests, doing assessments of those types of failures everywhere. And that's your only metric. So there's no annual review like that, like normal. There isn't any. How well did you do? There's none of that. It's, are the cars getting better? Like that's it. Or is the solar getting better? Or the batteries getting better? So you have basically engineering feedback to everyone at once. And it's not about you. It's not about your team. It's not about your job. It's truly the culture has super reinforced. What did you do today that made the paint quality even better on the Model X? What did you do today that made water penetration even better on the underbody of the Model Y, even though right now we're switching from marrying these little pieces of metal together to this huge one piece of molten aluminum, I'll call it one piece casting. So how water could get in is different today than it ever has been before. What did you do to make that more awesome? And like, that's it. Like that's it. And race teams, automotive race teams, do something really similar. The good ones, the fast ones, they just have one big metric at the top, which is what's our current lap time. And that's it. And it's not about my annual review or anything. It's just what's our current lap time. And Tesla does the same thing. And SpaceX does the same thing. For SpaceX, it's kilograms into orbit over a unit of time. And it's how many kilograms did we get into orbit this month, this week now, because they just get faster and faster. And that parent metric and no other metric just cuts out so much other stuff that might frustrate you or slow you down.
So all of the sort of examples you've been giving us around some of the Musk approaches, it's painting a picture for me, which is, there's a question that often people are asking, what's next after Agile? What's the next thing? How is Agile going to evolve? It feels like the Musk group have already started defining that. Would you say that's the case? And it'd be great to get your view on that.
Recently, I took a certified Scrum developer course from Paul Moore. And Paul Moore has been at this object-oriented architecture stuff and excellent engineering practices stuff for 20 years, more than 20 years. And I'll say my experience being in Paul's class is he's very talented at communicating what he thinks is important. He's an excellent instructor. I was really blown away, actually. And Paul shared a mindset with all of us that really worked for me. And Paddy, I think it comes to your point. And I think it explains the Musk model. Is Paul said, you've got waterfall where you make a big plan up front and the on time, on budget rate is low. Actually, he didn't say that, but I'll add that because I'm really familiar with the move from waterfall to Agile. And so he said, you've got waterfall and you move to Agile, and there's all the good reasons why, financially, business-wise, engagement-wise, shorter experience, customer feedback, so the product improves. But then you have that, and that next one is what was really useful to me. I'd seen it, I'd been seeing it for years. In fact, it's what WIKISPEED was. And I was confused why WIKISPEED slowed down every time I tried to make it formal Scrum. And I didn't get it, even though I was living it. And Mary and Tom Popendick tried to tell me this, 10 years ago? Like, Joe, don't go back to this one. Like, do this. And they even gave it some names, but Paul was able to make me see it finally. Thank you so much, Paul Moore. He said, and then you have continuous release. It's like, so you have waterfall where you're trying to get something done and you schedule those releases. And for companies that have difficulty getting anything done, which really happens, or companies that have trouble getting something done in a shorter amount of time, we've invented this thing called Scrum. and you have these, and I totally believe in Scrum. For a lot of companies that are having trouble getting anything done, or it's taking them longer than a month to actually have something tested and released in field, which is most companies, especially in hardware, but software too. Scrum is your good stepping stone. And honestly, I'll say scaled agile framework, Scrum at scale, less are really good stepping stones for these companies. But that's not the destination. Then you have these companies here. And when Jeff Sutherland and I went into Amazon, Amazon had 3,000 agile teams and no Scrum masters. And they weren't doing what's in the Scrum guide. And they were kicking everybody's butt. And I firmly remember Jeff looking at me and me looking at Jeff without the right words. And we didn't make a great play. I ended up saying, well, maybe you should introduce Scrum Masters onto your team. I didn't say maybe. You should introduce Scrum Masters onto your teams so that you can measure points burned downs and have more accurate forecasts. It was like the best I could give them. And that none of that was the point. They've passed this Scrum stuff. It would only slow them down. They're already at continuous release. And if I tried to roll out Scrum at scale or scaled agile framework or less or Nexus or disciplined agile delivery in Tesla, it would slow them down. It would be non-helpful. Now it's great for companies that are here to move towards this agile bubble. But what's beyond? Well, thank you, Paul Moore. He's just been living it for so long. He said it so naturally. And then you have continuous release. And if you look at the mob stuff, Woody Zool has been posting for more than 8 years. That's maybe here. And then there's this mission-focused empowerment that the Musk companies do very naturally. That's pretty similar, honestly. It's not that far off, but they're definitely not doing sprint planning. They don't have a framed retrospective. There's no Scrum Master. There's no product owner. It's role-less. There are not roles. And I think that's one of the points Musk keeps reinforcing by reinventing Musk's title. There's simply people that are working towards the mission. And it's fully organic. The team sizes become bigger is what I'm observing. And the larger the team size, it seems to be the better, actually. But that relies on a very high respect for people and respect for yourself, which I think these companies have difficulty with, the waterfall companies have difficulty with, and they map their respect and power to a title because they needed something. And you've got to completely let go of that. There's zero titles. You have to be comfortable saying Musk, that's a really bad idea. Like fully comfortable as a human conversation. You have to view yourself all as Musks and be willing to be wrong in a second and try not to take it personally and not be attached to big ideas. And you get to what Paul Moore called just continuous release, CI/CD. And I think that's what it is. And you don't need any roles, and you don't need any events or artifacts. You don't need any scaling patterns at all. What you do need is awesome engineering practices. You need test-driven development. You need automated test. You probably want BDD. If anything, a little bit more modern frameworks like Mobius Loop come closer to this, where they let you access all the particular nerdy practices, but give you a really simple like board game.
Yeah.
What
Gabriel Benefield created that, right? Yeah.
Gabriel Benefield is a modern genius, and I don't know how many people know that yet. So people listening to this, if you haven't looked up Gabriel Benefield and Mobius Loop among one of her many products, I recommend it. That'll probably get you pretty close. Even that is too slow to be real time the way the Tesla companies are, but it's close. Really, it's a letting go of hierarchy and title and role, and a focus on the mission and not yourself or your team. And all this agile stuff, Kanban, Scrum, I'm probably missing a lot of really good stuff that lean, work in process limiters, coded production system will bring slow companies closer to this, but you're going to have to throw out all of that to really be continuous release. But if your only focus or your primary focus is continuous release in a happy, healthy, skillful, high quality way, you win. So then you have a problem for people like me. My income is based on consulting, and my income and consulting is much easier if you have a roadmap and a strategy and a set of labeled, named things to sell. And I can do that for this thing in the middle. That's what Scrum did super well and continues to do super well. But I'm so frustrated working with how slow those companies are. But if I start talking about this continuous release stuff, I actually don't have much to say other than the certified Scrum developer content is maybe what I could call it. Excellent test-driven development for the business, CI/CD for finances, lean agile procurement that Merkel Kleiner is doing fits great in there. So I guess I could do that. But I don't have this elegant 3-5-3 of Scrum because it would only slow these companies down. No one stops for a stand-up in Tesla. It's not how it works. That's too slow. So I lose this powerful earning opportunity. So I've got to figure that one out. So I'm at a crisis of career. But I'll say the what's after Agile, maybe it's what Paul Moore shared with everybody, me too, saying it's simply continuous release, continuous deployment. And the practices that make that come true seem totally important. And maybe the gift I can bring the world is, what does CI/CD mean for management and business planning? Because I actually can do that and I'm experienced in that. And maybe that's largely not understood. I mean, that's why stuff like Scaled Agile Framework exists. They say, how do you take traditional annual budgeting or even quarterly, that's a little better, budgeting and planning, and get that into more agile teams? Well, that's way too slow for Tesla. Funding decisions are made in less than 60 seconds, like billion-dollar funding decisions. So how does that happen? That's outside the mindset of most companies. Maybe I could explain that and maybe even hang a brand name on that if I really wanted to consult and make money from it.